Welcome to Reality Kink. This is Master Hook, and I know that by the time this gets over, I am going to confuse, piss off, and probably get a lot of people to disagree with me about what I have to say. And that's perfectly fine, because this is about 50 Shades of Grey, the movie, not the book. This is not going to be touching the book, nothing to do with the book, has absolutely nothing at all involved with the book. This is about the movie exclusively. And this is going to be my review. And I'm going to kind of give everybody a big thing here. This is going to be a big spoiler warning. I am going to be spending a decent amount of time here going over the movie. Pretty much good point by point, bringing up a lot of spoiler things and so on. So let me get my non-spoiler review out of the way, and then I'll get into the spoiler review. And I really hate to say this, but I liked it. I know. I just kind of blew the minds of a lot of people out there, but I did. I actually did. I mean, the acting wasn't the greatest. The cinematography was really nice. The directing was good. The writing was surprisingly a lot better than I thought it was going to be. The acting, the characters there was definitely a disconnect between the character, between the actors, but the more I think about it, the more I just go into putting those aspects aside. Just dealing with the thing that I normally would want to deal with this. And that is the BDSM kink aspects. More specifically, the DS aspects, the dominant submission aspects of this movie. There was a lot more right than wrong. There was a lot of things that I sat and as I kept watching this movie, and I was sitting there, fourth row, center, took up my entire field of view. I already had read a couple reviews, and I was trying to block it out of my mind. I just wanted to go in fresh, watch the movie for what it was, not really thinking too much, and just go in and just let it happen. And I did. And sitting next to me, on my left-hand side, was my beautiful girl, with my hand placed right on her thigh and holding her hand the entire movie. I walked out of this movie really conflicted, because I have been spending years, ever since the book was a thing, hating this project. Hating it. It was a bad representation of BDSM and all this stuff, and the book was. Let's just be very, very clear. The book was. The movie, on the other hand, not so much. It really, you have to really take a step back from it being all of these things and actually analyze it from the point of view of what DS is. And it really wasn't that bad. And I'm going to get this also out of the way. There was nothing about this movie, not one thing at all, which screamed domestic violence. At all. In any way, shape, or form. Everything was consensual. Up into the last scene, everything was consensual. She had safe words. They used safe sex. When she said no, don't, and stop, he listened. There was a ton of things that happened in this movie that everybody keeps screaming, oh, this is, going to bring on more domestic violence and blah, blah, blah. Well, if people actually took the time to do what the fucking character in the movie did, which is to do research online, they'll realize that some of these things that people were saying is total bullshit. I read one review that basically said this was going to be, it's mainstreaming BDSM. I've been screaming about mainstreaming of BDSM for years. Hell, my videos are free and open on YouTube for anybody to watch. I mean, this movie is not going to be the end of society. It's not going to be, as I was reading, I read a thing that said, this culture is going to lead to more STDs and sexual violence and pregnancies. And I'm like, you're not watching the same movie I am, obviously, because it's not. Now, I am going to stop here, and I'm going to give you a chance to step away. I'm going to do a little commercial thing, step away, turn the podcast off, because when I come back, I am just going to lay into this movie. I'm going to lay out everything I thought about this movie. I'm all the good, bad, everything in between, and I'm just going to let loose. So if you're not ready to hear the spoilery part of this review, please stop listening, okay? But if you have, and you really want to hear some things, some real kind of truth to power kind of things, please keep listening. So, I'll be right back.
Masturbating with forks. Just another kinky fetish? Find out at fatlife.com.
Welcome back to Reality Kink, so let's just go for it. Okay. I have super mixed feelings about this, and I really want to just kind of go from beginning to end and get a lot of feelings and emotions out of the way about this, because I walked out of this movie, I wanted to scream. I did. I really did. And I'll get to that, but let's just go from the beginning to end here. The setup is, of course, as the way the book is, very unrealistic. Having a guy who is in his 20s, even if it's mid to late 20s, being a billionaire without the family already being rich. I mean, the family was somewhat rich, but not billionaire status. So this guy already had kind of a leg up because of his family. And that's something that, as we go forward and find out he was adopted and had a really bad start and blah, 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 that becomes a standard typical. The reason he's into kink is because he had a really bad, fucked up life. And the reason that she gets into kink is because her mom or her dad died and kind of had a fucked up life. None of this is true. This is all bullshit and garbage, and we can take that aspect of all of this stuff and throw it away, because it's kind of just as worthless as it is. But I understand why they had to put it in the film, because it was, a part and parcel of the book. But the whole premise of, she shows up, you look at the women in the office, and they're all super neatly dressed, smartly dressed, they have beautiful clothing, beautiful hair, they're all perfect shapes, blah, 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 blah. And then she walks in and something happens where he gets all enamored with her. And all of these things, okay, just take them as is. It's fantasy. It's Beauty and the Beast. Very clearly, the structure of this entire thing is Beauty and the Beast, and this is, even to the end of the movie, is still dealing with the structure of Beauty and the Beast. But this has kind of gotten kind of a thing that when I was watching it, I was like, okay, I know this story. The first thing that really happens that is right and wrong is the whole thing of him, let's just kind of go, they do the interview. He winds up showing up at the place that she works at, some little hardware store in Portland. It wasn't unrealistic. I mean, guys do this all the time. Guys, if they're interested in a chick, will, suddenly show up at where they work and, throw out little sexual innuendos and things like that. And what a fucking better place than a goddamn hardware store if you're kinky. But tape, they called it masking tape. It was not, should have been duct tape. But they probably couldn't use duct tape because of trademarks and things like that, as I'm staring at a roll of black duct tape right on my desk. Zip ties, big long cable zip ties, and rope. And they won't have to get me started that this would be, this guy would go into a hardware store and buy rope. I guarantee he wouldn't. He'd be going to, like, the Twisted Monk website or going to some other website that has really super high-end quality rope. He gives a shit about his equipment, so he would have not bought just random rope from a hardware store. Okay, I get that. It was him subtly saying, hey, by the way, I do kinky things, without coming out and saying, I do kinky things. And I get that. And then him coming to the rescue of her at the bar. Again, whether you like it or not, this shit really happens. The whole thing of him holding her hair as she throws up. Done it. The whole thing of taking her home and putting her into bed but not fucking her. Done it. None of that is unusual. Okay, the fact that he, again, multimillionaire, has a hotel, and then is staying in a nice hotel, and he has his limo driver go out and buy new clothes, blah blah blah. Just take all that, and then they have a conversation, and he decides to take her to his place, and every single time, she has an opportunity to say, "I'm out." They finally get to his place, and we finally get to see the infamous Red Room of Pain. Here's the deal. The only time that line is uttered in the entire movie is by her as a joke. He calls it my playroom. Or the playroom. Which, I would do the exact same thing. They never say, in no time does he call it the Red Room or, the Pain Room or anything like that. She says it as an offhand remark. After he shows her, and he says very clearly, I'm going to show you my playroom. And she does the, it was like with your Xboxes and stuff. He shows her the room. She freaks out a little bit. But before he enters the room, he says, by the way, the helicopter is ready, is fueled up, ready to go. If this freaks you out, there's the helicopter, go on, and then move on, then we won't, and that's it. It's all the right things. All the right things. Every aspect of this is the right thing. He gives her the opportunity to leave at every opportunity, but she keeps coming back. She chooses to come back. And by people saying that this is domestic violence, what they're saying is that she's a weak individual who does not have the ability to make up her own mind, and that this man is being a forcible thing. I had complained just on my recent video that I did about the movie Bound that this fucking stereotypes were so bad. This is not that. This is a very much more realistic portrayal of somebody who is a dominant and somebody who is a submissive. And the thing about it is that yes, he has had a lot of different submissives in his life, a lot of different play partners in his life, that he was able to be more aggressive and more, play harder and things like that. And the thing about it is that she's just not one of them. She is vanilla. And I'm going to get into some of these things as I go down here, but he explains it, and then they go forward, and he starts bringing kink in a little bit. The first time they have sex, he's bringing kink a little bit, holding her hands above her head as he's fucking her. I did that last night. Okay, the tie. Using the tie to tie up her hands, and she becomes a little bratty by moving her hands. She freely says freely does all these things, and the contracts. Oh God, I got to talk about the contracts. The first contract is not worth a piece of paper it's written on. It's a non-disclosure agreement. Any lawyer, lawyers love non-disclosure agreements. They're not worth a piece of paper they're written on. But that's a relative. That's basically, it's a boilerplate non-disclosure. I'm going to bring you into my home. I'm going to show you my stuff. Especially when you're a super high, when you're a high-end businessman, non-disclosure agreements have been tested in court, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But pretty much they're not worth a piece of paper they're written on. But that one's not the big one. It's the other contract. And the other contract does something I never expected. It becomes a negotiation tool. It becomes a tool where the two individuals are able to sit and talk and go, okay, I will do this, but I won't do this. I will do this, but I won't do that. Nipple clamps are fine. Genital clamps, not so much. This. I use the BDSM checklist all the time. I love using the BDSM checklist. And I'll eventually do a podcast on the BDSM checklist. But the BDSM checklist is, again, a negotiation tool. And what he did is he didn't say, and the way that it was worked out is that they had a business, she was like, well, if this is a contract, then we should have a business meeting. And they sat in the office, and they went back and forth, and they did exactly what I have been screaming at for a long time, is having the conversations. This is exactly what they had. They had the conversations. He told her to get on the internet and do research, and what they showed on there was really bad because she looked up submissive and immediately found bondage pictures for some reason. But the thing is that getting online and doing the research, all of this stuff, everything that happened up until these points was right. And then we get from that, they have the graduation where, this is the first time they had sex, his mom shows up. I haven't had that particular situation happen, but it's very clear that stuff that is realistic. It's very realistic that, I've been in the middle of playing and the roommates come home, or one of the girls I was with had a kid, and her kid liked to get up in the middle of the night and come into her room, and we were in the middle of playing, I'm on top of her, and the door starts opening, and I have to quickly jump off and kind of act like I'm not, that I wasn't in the middle of doing something. This is all realistic things. This was all absolutely 110% realistic. We get to the graduation. Her dad meets him, so the families have kind of met each other. Later on, her mom meets him, and and then she goes to dinner with them. All of this is happening. All of it very realistic. All of it. The first play scene that they do, very, very realistic. Okay? He does some things that are dead on the money when it comes to how we do things. Like, told her how to be dressed when she was in the room. Told her where to be when he comes into the room. And to be in that position when he comes into the room and be ready for him. How to kneel, where to put her hands, how to put her eyes. This is all shit that we do constantly. This is all shit that happens all the fucking time. And for somebody to say that this is, tantamount of violence and this is domestic violence and stuff like that does not know our fucking community. Okay? I don't know if the writers went and spent a long time talking to people in the community. I know from everything I read that the play scenes and like the playroom and stuff, that they actually brought in people from the community to sit and actually be involved with the production of the design of the rooms and the play and everything like that. It was actually people brought in to actually get involved in the production. And so the thing about it is that with all of that being stated, they had to have had discussions with him about this in the writing process, because simple things like the kneeling, where to put the hands, is all things I have done. This is one of my biggest problems with this entire fucking thing, is 90% of the shit that happens in this movie is all shit that I've done, even though I'm not some rich billionaire, but the actual DS aspects of this is all shit I've done. the movie keeps going, blah, 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 relationship. You know, we get into the family thing, and, about her touching, and we're gonna get in it, that's gonna wind up being something psychological that we gotta get into, and he does at one point, I think it was after the first play session, where she was sleeping. He goes into the room and just starts laying out, this is what happened to me when I was a kid, blah, 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 blah. He should have done that while she was awake. That was one of the things I would fault him on. He should have been open and had these discussions with her. She later goes, well, how did you get into this? And this is where the whole Mrs. Robinson thing came up. And for the way the movie lays it out is that when he was 15, a older female friend of his mom was a dom, and he wound up going and being her submissive for 6 years, basically meaning till he was about 20. A timeline kind of issue because he would have been going to college at that time, and all of that aside. And the whole, being he was 15, she was older. Okay. When I was 18, I did exactly what he did, but for 2 years, not 6. I went and had a mistress who was older, who trained me for 2 years. This is not unrealistic. Yes, the whole he was 15 thing I have an issue with, because you should, be at least 18 before doing this. But I've talked to 15-year-olds. I've had discussions with 15-year-olds, giving them advice and giving them direction. And my main piece is wait 3 years. Wait till you're 18. So, is that unrealistic? No. Is it really kosher? Not really. It's not necessarily the greatest thing that can be done. But it is what it is. It's one of those it is what it is kind of things. And later in the movie, she gets all a little upset that he's going to go and spend some time with her. Well, you know what? I have people in my life that I had relationships with years ago that I'm still friends with. That I was their first master, or I was their first dom. I was the first person that introduced them to the lifestyle. I've been on that other side, even though it wasn't with a 15-year-old. So this is all stuff that's very, very, very real. They get to the first real play scene, and one thing that happens in the movie that I honestly was shocked at is when they were doing the play scenes, they used safe words liberally. They used them. He said, "Here are you know what your safe words are," and he didn't choose red. They had yellow, fucking yellow. And if you go back to my YouTube channel and look up all of the fucking videos I have on screaming about safe words, and I know that I'm one of the few people who have spent a long time screaming about safe words on YouTube, I bring up the fact that there is 3 primary safe words to be used inside of a play scene: green, yellow, and red. It's the traffic light concept. Green meaning you can keep going. Don't you I feel like you're holding back. It's not a bottoming from the top situation. It's just a communicational aspect. Yellow meaning whatever you're doing, that particular thing, please don't do that, but continue on doing play, because if you keep doing that, I'm going to wind up coding out. And red. And red meaning stop, we're done, it's over. And he fucking explains it. This is one of the reasons that I am so fucking annoyed with a lot of the reviews out there, because the bottom line is that this movie got it right. It got it right. It got it right in some of the worst ways possible. Because of all of the hype and the controversy and everything. It was right. And whether you like it or not, the reality is that the DS aspects of this movie were right. Even to being so realistic that the very end scene, and this is going to be ultra spoilery because I'm going to get into the very end of the movie right here. One of the things that I keep telling people is if you're going to be a dominant, you're going to be a master, which, by the way, he is not a master. He is a dominant acting like a master. It's very simple. He is a dominant acting like a master. And there is a difference. As the old saying goes, every master is a dom, but not every dom is a master. It's not. It's complicated in the most stupid ways possible. But the thing about it is that he is. And where he showed he wasn't a master was the last few minutes of the movie. What happened was, the whole dinner with Mrs. Robinson, and she surprises him, says she's going to go spend some time with her mom in Georgia. He comes out and surprises her. Again, I don't see that as a big deal. They do the whole, if you saw the trailer, the glider scene, and then he gets a call that makes him have to rush back to Seattle for something. It's never explained. And honestly, I don't think it's really relevant to what exactly it is. I would like to know what it is, but I'm guessing it's a hostile business takeover, blah, 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 something. He goes back, and when she finally, gets off, she gets back, flies into Seattle, gets driven back to his apartment, to his condo or his home or whatever it is, and she comes in, he's on the phone freaking out. And the thing about it is that I have said repeatedly, never, ever, ever, ever play when you are in this emotional state. Never play. Because something bad will happen. You need to never play angry. It's a pretty standard thing for me. I never play angry. This is where the line between a dominant and a master is. He should have said, when when they got into the argument, and she said, "Show me your worst." His answer should have been, "Not right now." The emotions were running too high. And honestly, it wouldn't have mattered when he took her into the room that all he did is he touched her. It would have been bad. But what he did was he did 6 hard belt strikes and made her count. And he waited until she had actually said the number before moving on to the next one. Here's the thing. This is fucking standard inside the BDSM community. The counting as part of the play is standard inside the BDSM community. There's nothing about it which isn't normal and standard and the way that we do things. That wasn't abusive. She wanted it. She agreed to it and could have stopped it at any time. She knew that there was... she could have stopped it after 1. She could have, coded out, and that would have been the end of it. But she wanted to go through it. And the thing about it is I've been in situations... This is even with my girl. And we actually fucking were in the middle of the movie theater, and we talked about this. We said this in the middle of the fucking movie theater. We've been in that spot. When I first came about, was it about a year and a half ago to spend some time with her, she had never been flogged. Never had been put into that position. And so she wanted me to do it. So I did. And pretty much exactly how it happened in the movie, at the end of it, we had a little, we had some time, but she went upstairs to her bedroom. And the exact same position that Anastasia was in the fucking movie was the exact same position I found my girl when I went into her bedroom back a year and a half ago when I had flogged her. And I actually ended with a count. I did a 10 count. I think a 6 count is kind of silly. 5 count or a 10 count. Okay. That is. And also, I've always disagreed with the concept of using play as punishment. I've been very vocal on the whole concept of play as punishment concept. I did exactly what he didn't. I talked. I sat and had a very long conversation, explaining everything, explaining my feelings and emotions and everything else under the sun. I talked to her, I held her, I did everything, she asked a ton of questions, I gave her all the answers, I listened to her concerns and everything, and it took us another, year before we started playing with floggers again. We did a bunch of other things, we had tons of other play and tons of sex and tons of everything else, but we didn't flog. If you heard the episode that I did 2 episodes back at the Play Club. That was the first real flogging scene I've done with her since I've been with her. And the thing about it is that we had one other time prior to that where we had some experiment. And we were able to play, and I was able to find a way to flog her that was able to be pleasing to her and enjoyable for me, and not, me not having to play at a super high end, but play enough where I was able to get what I need out of it, but for her to be able to enjoy it. So the thing about it is that it took us a long time to get from that time where she was in her room exactly how Anastasia was to where we were able to go and do this really great, amazing play scene. And it took us a year to get to there. But the thing is that he made the mistake by not opening up and having those discussions, which has got to be where the second movie is. And honestly, I still feel that the way this movie ended, first off, I hate movies that just end, that don't have a conclusion. And that's exactly what happened with this movie. But I think it did it because it had to. It had to end that way. It had to end with her her telling him no and leaving, and in the elevator, hearkening back to the very beginning of the movie where she said where he said her name, she said his name, and that was the end of the movie. Roll credits. This movie, I'm not going to recommend for everybody. It's not. Reading all the reviews, I can honestly state that it's not. The reviews are wrong when it comes to the DS part of it. The DS part of it and the kink side of it is right. It may not be the greatest acting, may not be, and you might judge it on those aspects. And the ending, I thought, was kind of abrupt, but I also think that they kind of knew they were going to get the sequels, so that's the only reason that they ended it this way, because if they didn't know they were getting the sequels and this is how they decided to end it, oh my god, that's incredibly horrible. From what I was told, this is not how the book ended. But the way it ended, I hated it, but I hated it for the right reasons. I hated it because I wanted more. I wanted a conclusion. I wanted him to make the big gestures and have the conversations and allow her to touch him and allow her to learn all these things about him and why he is how he is, and have all of these things and grow as human beings. Even within the movie, we saw him grow and change and become something a little bit different. This is what happens with real humans. You have these interactions and things that make you grow and change. It's not this static thing of this is what a master is, and this is what a slave is, and this is what a dominant is, and this is what a submissive is, and this is the structure of how they are and who they are and what they are. That is bullshit, and anybody who's in the community knows this. I've met people that are like both of these characters inside the kink community. And I've been hating on this project for ever since I ever heard about it. The books were horrid, badly written, badly done. They were fan fiction. But the movie, I actually have to say, if you want to see what a DS could look like, I'm sorry, but those scenes, the sex scenes, were pretty damn good. So it's one of these things of I can sit and I can try to explain it and try to go on. You just have to, unless you've lived it, and I think that's the major difference between me and most other people who see this, is that I'm just not a kinkster. I'm not somebody who it's just part of, a little bit of my life. It is my life. Okay? It is part of every day of me. When I wake up, I am Master Hook. When I go to sleep, I am Master Hook. When I am at work, I am still Master Hook. I am me. I am not. This is part of my life and my existence. And so when Christian Grey says some of the stuff he says, I absolutely understand it. And my girl when I first started talking to her, she was pure vanilla. I had been in the life for, since I was 18. So I brought her into my world, and that's exactly what's happening in this movie. And the fact that it ended the way it did, and the structure and this way it worked, was a lot more right than wrong. And I know, I'm sitting here fucking defending 50 Shades of Grey, but honestly, That's the only way I can do it. I can't slam this movie. The DS aspects were right. So that's kind of it. I'm gonna kind of leave it here. I'm gonna let you make a decision. Please, if you disagree with me, get a hold of me. I'm on Fed under Masterhook and Masterhook YT. I'm on Gmail at masterhookyt@gmail.com. Find me on, of course, my YouTube page. Find me on Twitter under Master Mike Hook. Get a hold of me. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm wrong. I really want whoever is listening to this to tell me where I'm wrong. Because I would love to have that discussion. I would love for somebody to tell me I'm wrong. I don't get that very often. I put out tons and tons and tons of videos, and besides the little ad hominem attacks and shit, 99% of everything I've said, nobody's disagreed with me. If I'm wrong here, please tell me I'm wrong. That's it. So I'm going to finish this podcast up. That's it for now. Be well and safe.